"Fix this engine, Mr. Hayes," Claire Emerson said, her voice cool as polished steel, "and I'll get on one knee and propose to you in front of this entire boardroom." Silence cracked the air like a whip. Marcus Hayes didn't flinch. The conference room, a glass and marble monument suspended atop the 78th floor of Emerson Innovations, echoed with muted gasps. The board members glanced at each other, some amused, others horrified. A few stifled laughs broke loose. Then came the unmistakable click of a camera zooming in. Internal live stream. Every employee watching, every shareholder, every investor. Claire leaned back in her chair. Fingers steepled. Immaculate in her tailored navy suit with her platinum blonde hair slicked into a bun sharp enough to pierce steel, she oozed power and the cruelty that often comes with it. The engine prototype, sleek experimental, barely holding together, sat dead in the center of the room like a diffused bomb. Marcus stood beside it, a janitor in a worn-out navy jumpsuit. His hands were calloused, smudged with oil. His salt and pepper stubble looked like it hadn't seen a razor in a week. A name patch on his chest read M. Hayes. "Go on." Brooks, the lead investor from Berlin, scoffed. Let the janitor perform his little magic trick. More laughter, more camera clicks, and yet Marcus remained still, calm, like the eye of a hurricane that no one noticed was coming. He gently set down the small red toolbox he'd brought with him, worn faded and scarred by years of repairs on machines no one bothered to understand. His eyes swept over the engine, scanning its every bolt, joint, and circuit. Then he spoke, his voice low but steady. "The problem isn't in your code," he said. "It's in your rhythm." Laughter stopped. Brooks blinked. "Excuse me." Marcus turned to the group, meeting each stunned face without apology. "Machines are like people. You ignore their rhythm." They shut down. Claire's eyes narrowed. "We've spent $14 million in diagnostics, Mr. Hayes. Spare me the poetry." He looked at her, then really looked. Not as a CEO, not as a woman trying to protect her crown. Just another human, exhausted and proud and afraid to show it. "You made a bet," Marcus said, quiet enough that the room leaned in. "Now, let me show you what's worth betting on." A ripple passed through the room, something unnameable. Unease. Intrigue. Claire opened her mouth, but the words caught in her throat. For the first time in years, she didn't know whether she wanted someone to fail or to prove her wrong. A few hours earlier, the engine had failed its fifth demo. Investors were pulling out. The German delegation threatened to withdraw their patent licensing deal if Emerson Innovations couldn't stabilize the prototype within 48 hours. The entire boardroom was on edge, nerves fraying like wires about to snap. Claire had watched as one overpaid engineer after another stumbled through explanations. She hadn't built this company to watch it burn. She'd built it to own the fire. And then Dr. Maria Reyes, head of R&D, the only one with any spine left, had stood up and said one name, Jamal Hayes. The room had blinked, confused. Claire had frowned. The janitor. "His father built engines for 27 years, Maria said. "The man used to rebuild rotaries by sound alone. Marcus grew up inside that workshop. He listens differently." Claire scoffed. "This is science, not jazz." Maria had only smiled. "Sometimes the line is thinner than you think." Now, Marcus reached into his toolbox and pulled out something that made everyone lean forward, a stethoscope. Not medical, mechanical, brass-framed, antique, the kind that only old-school mechanics use, designed to listen to engines the way a doctor listens to a heartbeat. He placed the cold metal head gently against the engine's side panel. The boardroom held its breath. A faint thump, 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 thump echoed from the speakers mic'd in through the room's sound system, the heartbeat of a machine. Marcus closed his eyes. He wasn't in a boardroom now. He was 12 again, back in his grandfather's garage in Georgia. Oil under his nails, the scent of rust and sawdust in the air, his granddad saying, "Engines don't lie, boy, but they don't speak English either. You gotta listen. Machines got soul rhythm. That's how you find what's broken." He opened his eyes. "To everyone else it sounds fine, Marcus said, "but the compression on chamber 4 is dragging. Just enough to throw the balance off." Dr. Reyes leaned forward, eyes wide, which would cause the overheat loop in the self-regulating coolant valve. Claire blinked. Brooks rolled his eyes. "This is absurd." But something had shifted. Claire felt it, like watching a man walk barefoot across a tightrope she didn't even know existed. Marcus moved with quiet certainty, adjusting a dial, tapping a wire. "It's not about how fast it spins," he said. "It's whether it breathes right. Machines aren't impressed by money or titles. They just want to run the way they were made to." He stood back, gave a single nod. "Try it now." Maria hesitated, then pressed the ignition key. The engine roared. Not coughed, not stuttered. Roared with the steady hum of a predator awakening a sound deep and clean and alive. The boardroom exploded with gasps. Even Brooks stood up speechless. The screen monitoring core temperatures glowed green. All systems optimal. Claire's lips parted slightly. Marcus didn't celebrate. He simply folded the stethoscope and placed it back into the box. Claire stood, walked slowly toward him. She looked at the engine, then at him. "Who are you?" she asked, quieter than she expected. He met her eyes. "A janitor," he said. "But more importantly, I'm a father." And with that he turned and walked out, toolbox in hand. But before the elevator doors closed, he paused and for just a second looked back. Claire caught the flicker in his eye. Not arrogance. Conviction. And for the first time in her entire career, she didn't feel like she'd just won. She felt like she'd been seen. The elevator groaned slightly as it descended, carrying Marcus away from the 78th floor of power and scrutiny. He didn't look back. Tucked under one arm was his red toolbox. In his other hand, carefully folded, was a drawing crayon on printer paper, a child's rendition of an engine shaped like a heart, pulsing rhythmically with arrows pointing to each piston, the heartbeat machine. Nora had drawn it the night before. He had promised her, half-joking, that he'd take it with him like a good luck charm. But right now, as the world upstairs still reeled from what just happened, that drawing felt more like an anchor to the only world that really mattered. His world. The apartment in Harlem wasn't much. 2 small bedrooms, a galley kitchen, walls thin enough to hear neighbors argue about laundry or lose their minds over Knicks games. But to Marcus, it was a temple. It was 7:52 p.m. when he pushed open the front door, the scent of lemon cleaner and crayons greeting him like an old friend. Daddy Nora flew into his arms like a comet, wrapping her skinny arms around his neck. He scooped her up and held her close, breathing in the scent of shampoo and peanut butter. "You're late," she said, pouting. "I drew a new version of the metronome for you. The gears sync better." "Well, then, I better sync my cooking skills," Marcus smiled, brushing her curls from her forehead. "Because someone's getting hungry." They moved together through the kitchen like a dance choreographed by years of surviving alone. He peeled carrots while she read out measurements from the old cookbook. "Do you think machines feel scared when they're broken?" she asked suddenly. Marcus looked up. "Scared?" She nodded seriously. "Like, if they know people are mad at them for not working, like they want to try harder, but they can't find the rhythm." He stilled. "I think machines are like people," he said softly. "They don't need someone yelling at them. They need someone to listen." Nora gave a small thoughtful nod, then returned to coloring. After dinner, while Nora curled on the couch with a worn copy of Charlotte's Web, Marcus cleaned the dishes and stared at the envelope propped against the fruit bowl. He'd left it unopened for 2 days. The return address was a law office in Albany. Inside, he already knew, was a formal petition from his ex-wife. She wanted to reevaluate custody. She had remarried, had a real house now, health insurance, stability. The phrase "best interest of the child" had been underlined. Marcus dried his hands and opened the envelope. "You have 21 days to respond. Failure to demonstrate adequate financial stability may result in modified custody." He stared at the words until they blurred. From the living room, Nora's voice floated in. "Did you know spiders write words in webs? That's how they save pigs." "You're the only web I care about, baby," he muttered. He walked into the bedroom, opened the wooden box beneath his bed. Inside was a stethoscope, his father's, the same one he used in the boardroom today. The diaphragm was dented. The rubber tubing was cracked at the bends, but it worked. He held it to his own chest. Thump, 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 thump. No million-dollar software could teach him that rhythm. It was passed down like a torch. His father, his grandfather, men who didn't make noise but never stopped fighting, just like he couldn't stop now. Later that night, Nora had fallen asleep, arms sprawled across her sketchbook's mouth, slightly open in mid-thought. Marcus gently lifted her, tucked her into bed. She stirred. "Did they laugh at you again today?" "Daddy?" His chest tightened. Some did, but some listened. She squinted up at him. "Did you fix it?" "Almost," he whispered. "We're close." She nodded once. "Machines have hearts. You just have to find their beat." He sat there long after she drifted off the dim glow of her nightlight, casting soft constellations on the ceiling. He whispered into the quiet, "If I give up, you'll think it's okay to be stepped on." And it's not. Morning came with sirens outside and burnt toast inside. Marcus, dressed in the same navy uniform, patch fraying at the edge. He fixed Nora's lunch, braided her hair like her favorite YouTuber, and kissed her forehead twice, once for courage, once for luck. He walked her to the bus stop. She turned before getting on. "If they try to make you feel small again," she said, squinting like a little general, "just remember you already fixed the rhythm." He smiled. "And you drew the map." She grinned, then boarded the bus. Back at Emerson Innovations, Marcus entered through the maintenance door past rows of engineers who suddenly turned silent when he passed. Not mocking now, just uncertain. He's passed by Dr. Maria Reyes in the hallway. "You're a walking mystery, Mr. Hayes," she said with a smile. "Nah," he replied. "Just a dad with ears." She laughed, then handed him a note. Claire wanted to see him again. Marcus sighed. "I thought she'd be planning my public execution," he joked. Maria's eyes twinkled. "You shook something loose yesterday. Whether that's fear or hope remains to be seen." Upstairs in the executive suite, Claire Emerson stared at the city skyline like it had insulted her personally. She didn't turn when Marcus entered. "I should have you fired for insubordination," she said coldly. "I'm just the janitor, remember?" Marcus replied. A pause, a slow turn. Her eyes were sharp, unreadable. "You embarrassed me in front of billionaires, challenged my authority, and rewired my engine like it was your lawnmower. And yet, the board thinks you're our savior. I'm not," he said. "But I'm someone who doesn't run when things get messy." Claire studied him, and for just a moment the mask cracked. "Do you believe people can change, Mr. Hayes?" He blinked. "Depends. Are we talking machines or hearts?" "Both," she said. He didn't answer. He didn't need to, because somewhere deep in the silence between them, a new rhythm had just begun. The office lights had dimmed to a soft amber glow. Outside, Manhattan's skyline shimmered like it was trying to outshine the stars. Inside, Claire Emerson sat alone. Her heels off her shoulders no longer squared her reflection ghost-like in the floor-to-ceiling glass behind her. A notification pinged. She didn't look. She already knew what it said. Subject, internal. Live stream replay. Metrics, views, 112. 452 comments, 3007. Top comment. The janitor fixed what a room full of engineers couldn't. She should have been furious. Should have demanded PR pull the video. Should have spun it. Instead, Claire closed the laptop and listened to the silence. She was 10 the first time someone called her useless. It was the day her father left. The door slammed. The world didn't end. It just got quieter in all the wrong places. Her mother didn't cry. She cleaned. Scrubbed the counter like it had offended her. Then she looked at Claire and said, "He left because of you. Couldn't even take care of yourself." That sentence burrowed deeper than any insult the board ever hurled. Deeper than market losses, corporate betrayals, or whispers behind her back. She'd built an empire atop that one belief: I am only as valuable as I am needed. And now a janitor had walked into her kingdom and realigned the heartbeat of her most expensive project. Claire leaned her head back and closed her eyes. "Machines have rhythm," she whispered to no one. What a ridiculous thing to say. And yet, through the tinted glass of her office, she could see the company courtyard far below. Two silhouettes emerged, Marcus Hayes holding the hand of a small girl bouncing beside him. Claire watched them like a stranger peering through the window of someone else's life. The girl pointed at something, laughing. Marcus knelt beside her, adjusted her backpack, brushed her curls out of her face with a tenderness so natural it didn't need to be explained. Claire's fingers touched the cold glass almost unconsciously. She had never had that, not once. Not from her father, not from her mother, not from the line of broken men who only saw her worth in stock options and proximity to power. She dropped her hand and exhaled sharply. "You're not envious," she told herself, "you're just tired." But even she didn't believe that. A knock at the door. Firm, intentional. She straightened. "Come in." Dr. Maria Reyes stepped in, tablet in hand, lips pressed into a line of restrained urgency. "We may have a solution," Maria said, getting straight to the point, "but you won't like it. Is it legal?" "Barely." Claire folded her arms. "Then I'm listening." Maria walked forward, placed the tablet on the desk, and tapped the screen. Schematics filled the display, data points, flowcharts, adjustments. Marcus identified a timing imbalance. Not in the code, not in the software, but in the physical vibration pattern between the load valves and the onboard metering system. English, Maria. "The engine doesn't feel right. It's not synced. It's like having a jazz band where the drummer's off by a half beat." Claire arched a brow. "He's a janitor, not Thelonious Monk. He's also the only person who got it to run clean for 18 minutes straight." Claire looked at the screen again. "You want to put him back in the room." Maria didn't blink. "Give him 2 hours, fully monitored. Live stream to the company. Let the data speak." Claire scoffed. "If he fails, I look desperate. Weak. I've already been laughed at once this week." Maria said nothing for a beat. Then quietly, "But if he succeeds, you look like a visionary who saw value where no one else did." Claire stared at her, then slowly, almost reluctantly nodded. Later that night, she sat alone again. This time in the executive lounge, the fire crackling low in the modern stone hearth. A glass of untouched scotch sat beside her laptop. The video was still up. She hit play. Marcus in his uniform, hands steady, eyes calm, not seeking approval, just present. She paused the video at the moment he placed the stethoscope on the engine. The screen froze, framing his face in shadows and gold light, and for some reason she couldn't quite name. Her chest tightened. She didn't hear the footsteps, didn't notice the door open, but she felt it some kind of shift in the room. When she turned, Maria was back. "Tomorrow, Maria said he'll be in Sub Bay 7 at 10 a.m. Full live stream. I've cleared it with legal." Claire nodded once. Then, after a long pause, said something no one had ever heard her say aloud. "Do you think he hates me?" Maria's brows lifted slightly. Claire shrugged, too honest to hide behind sarcasm for once. "I humiliated him," she said, "publicly. I mocked him, made a spectacle of his work, and he still fixed the engine." Maria tilted her head. "Maybe he didn't do it for you." Claire blinked. Maybe, Maria continued, he did it for someone who believes in him when no one else does. There was silence. Then Claire asked, softer this time, "What kind of man does that?" Maria smiled. "The kind of man who doesn't measure worth by who's looking." When she was alone again, Claire opened her drawer and pulled out a photograph. Faded, curled edges. She almost never looked at it anymore, her at 10 years old. Sitting on the back porch steps, her father in the background walking away, her mother arms crossed scowling at something out of frame, Claire in the center. Forgotten. She traced the outline of the little girl's face. "You built walls," she whispered, "because doors never opened. But maybe, just maybe, there was something on the other side worth letting in." The announcement came just after sunrise. A company-wide alert pinged through the Emerson Innovations app Slack channel's even desktop screensavers. Today at 10:00 a.m. Sub-Bay 7. Prototype test final attempt. Live stream access for all departments. 2-hour limit. Supervised by Dr. Maria Reyes. 300 employees paused their coffee. Some chuckled. Others raised brows. A few exchanged texts like the janitor's back. Wait, is this real 2 hours? That's insane. Popcorn status activated. And, far above on the executive floor, Claire Emerson stood by the glass again, arms folded, lips unreadable, as the city below blinked awake. Sub-Bay 7 was never meant for theater. A concrete underbelly of the building it was where experimental components went to die or resurrect. Fluorescent lights buzzed above metal grates. Oil stains marked the floor like old wounds. Monitors lined the side wall streaming diagnostics in real time. Marcus Hayes stood in the middle of it all, toolbox in one hand, folded paper in the other, Nora's drawing. He placed it beside the ignition console like a talisman. Dr. Maria Reyes stood by his side, clipboard in hand, mic'd to the control room. "Timer starts now," she said into her comm. 2 hours, full transparency. The live stream flickered to life across the company. Offices, cafeterias, even investor lobbies. Everyone watching. Everyone waiting to see if the janitor would crash and burn or pull off the impossible. Upstairs, Claire watched from her office. Brooks, the German investor, appeared on her screen via Zoom. "This is madness," he snapped. "You're staking your reputation on an uncredentialed man." Claire didn't blink. "We've tried credentials. They failed. You're emotionally compromised." Her voice stayed cool. "That's rich coming from a man whose ego flared the moment someone in a jumpsuit outperformed your golden boys." He leaned in. "If he fails, I'm pulling my funding." Claire met his stare. "And if he succeeds, I'll expect an apology." Down in the bay, Marcus removed the engine casing. Quiet. Focused. Not dramatic. Not rushed. He wasn't performing. He was listening. He slipped the stethoscope on again. Not for show, because this was the only way he knew how to hear machines. Thump, 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 thump. He closed his eyes. This engine wasn't broken, it was confused. Out of sync, like a heartbeat skipping when it should dance. "Metric bolts on an imperial chassis," he muttered. "That's why it's breathing sideways." Maria blinked. "What?" He pointed. "See the torque backlash on that shaft half-millimeter shift. It's not the software, it's the frame. Your algorithms are compensating for hardware that was never calibrated to the same tempo." He stood and wiped his hands. "This thing doesn't need brilliance, it needs balance." Across the live stream, engineers started scribbling notes. Some gawked. Others nodded slowly. Because it made sense. The room temperature shifted. 37 minutes in. Investor Brooks texted Claire. "What is he doing to the torque vectors?" Claire replied without looking, fixing them. "Bring me the damper kit," Marcus said. A young tech assistant, Amelia first-year MIT dropout turned intern, rushed over with the parts. Her hands shook slightly. "Don't worry," Marcus said softly. "We're not trying to impress the suits. We're just trying to make it breathe right." She looked at him like no one had spoken to her like that before. Claire watched. And for a second she forgot about share prices, forgot about Brooks, forgot about the board. She watched his hands. Steady. Intentional. He wasn't just repairing, he was listening. And, for the first time in her career, Claire Emerson realized she had no idea how anything truly worked. She had only ever known how to control. With 48 minutes left, Marcus stepped back. "Start it," he said. Maria hit the ignition. The engine purred. Clean, balanced, harmonized. Diagnostics flowed green. Load cycles smooth. Vibration levels optimal. In the cafeteria, spontaneous applause erupted. On Slack, number freaking. Way. Bro, he did it. The janitor is him. But up in the boardroom, Brooks was stone-faced. "I want a full forensic analysis," he growled into the call. Claire tilted her head. Why? You don't trust what you see. Brooks narrowed his eyes. Machines don't lie, but men do. Back in Sub-Bay 7, Amelia smiled. You just saved the project, she whispered. Marcus didn't smile back. He looked at the data again. Something twitched in his expression. Offbeat? Barely there. Maria noticed. What's wrong? He leaned in. Recalculated. No. It was too smooth. Too perfect. We're not done, he said flatly. Maria blinked. Marcus, the readings are optimal. Someone's tampered with it. Amelia froze. Tampered? He pointed at the pressure readings. The preload on this bearing is off by just enough to pass inspection, but not enough to survive under actual field conditions. Maria's face dropped. Sabotage. Marcus turned slowly to face the observation camera. His voice was calm, controlled. I'll fix it again, he said. Even if someone wants me to fail. Upstairs, Claire's blood ran cold. Because for the first time she wasn't just watching a man fix a machine. She was watching someone risk everything for something bigger than himself, and she couldn't decide what rattled her more, that he was right, or that someone inside her company wanted him to be wrong. The silence in Sub-Bay 7 was louder than any alarm. The engine had coughed, roared, then died again. At minute 18, just as the reading stabilized, smoke coiled from the intake valve like a warning signal. The live stream cut to static. The diagnostic lights flickered from green to yellow, then red. Brooks was the first to speak. His voice piped in from the upstairs Zoom panel, smug and sharp. Looks like the magic wore off Mr. Hayes. Marcus didn't answer. He crouched beside the machine fingers, gliding across the frame like a surgeon checking for pulse beneath the skin. Something wasn't right. The hum was off. Not just broken, betrayed. He leaned in, pressed the old brass stethoscope to the engine casing. Thump, 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 thump. No, that wasn't rhythm, that was resistance. Claire stood stiff in her office, arms locked across her chest, the live stream frozen on her secondary screen. She'd seen it before, failure creeping in like frost beneath the door. The moment everything slipped just far enough out of your grasp that there was no pulling it back. But Marcus didn't look defeated. He looked focused. Down in the bay, Dr. Maria Reyes approached slowly. You did everything right. We triple-checked the tolerances. Triple-checked isn't enough, Marcus replied, not looking up. Not when someone wants you to fail. Maria's brows knit. You think this was sabotage? I don't think, he said. I know. He pointed at a small, subtle misalignment in the bearing preload system. Barely visible, barely detectable, but enough to cause a slow-burn failure. This wasn't fatigue, Marcus muttered. It was intentional. From the observation platform, Amelia gasped. But who would... She stopped herself. The answer was obvious. Half the engineering floor resented Marcus. Some had been passed over, others embarrassed, a few just offended that a janitor could hear what they couldn't even see. Maria's voice dropped. Do you want to pull the plug? File a formal complaint? No. Marcus stood. I want a wrench. He turned to the camera. Put the stream back on, he said calmly. Maria started. If they're going to watch me fail, he said, they should at least see how a man fails standing up. 10 minutes later, the live stream blinked back to life. Claire sat forward in her chair. Brooks smirked in his little video window. He's going to humiliate himself. Claire didn't reply. She just kept watching. Marcus rolled up his sleeves and reached into the engine like a man playing a piano he'd rebuilt with his bare hands. Each movement was purposeful, clean. He adjusted the preload manually, discarding the auto-calibration specs. He removed the sabotaged damper and replaced it with a hand-filed stabilizer he'd made years ago for a diesel compressor that coughed like a dying bull. He remembered his grandfather's words. If a machine won't speak, teach it how to hum again. He whispered to the engine like it was a child scared to wake up. Nora's drawing peeked out from his shirt pocket. A heart beating in perfect rhythm next to the words, "Even machines need someone to believe in them." He closed the casing, wiped the sweat from his brow, and turned to Maria. "Let's try again. This time, the engine didn't just start, it sang. A deep, low, resonant hum filled the room, the kind of sound that wraps around your chest and settles into your bones. Every meter leveled, every pressure point held. The airflow was seamless, temperature cool, timing impeccable. The chat exploded. No way! He fixed a sabotaged engine. Bro, he's like... The engine whisperer. Maria whispered almost reverently, "It's perfect." Marcus just stepped back and said quietly, "It's honest." Claire stood alone. She had watched hundreds of product tests, millions of dollars in innovation demos, dozens of viral press events. None of them had ever felt like this. She zoomed in the live stream, focused on Marcus's face. The quiet pride, the restraint. He wasn't there for the applause. He wasn't expecting redemption. He just wanted the thing to work right because someone believed it could. And for the first time, Claire felt something she hadn't felt since she was a child, sitting by her father's busted cassette player, hoping he'd fix it just to prove he still loved something: hope. The engine idled to a perfect stop. Not because it failed, because it didn't need to prove itself anymore. Maria turned to Marcus, her voice catching. "Why didn't you tell me someone tried to sabotage you?" He shrugged. "Because then the story becomes about the one who tried to break it when it should be about the one who made it whole again." Maria stared at him. "You realize that's something people are going to remember, right?" He looked at her. "I hope she does." Claire felt her breath catch, because she knew he meant her. Later that evening, as Marcus packed up, Amelia approached. She held out a printout, his diagnostics signed and verified. "You just broke 3 internal performance records," she said. He nodded, quietly placing the stethoscope back in its box. "You're not mad?" she asked. He looked at her. Being angry is easy, listening's harder. Then he left toolbox in hand, shoulders tired but eyes still steady. Back in her office, Claire rewatched the stream. Paused it. Right at the moment where Marcus lifted Nora's drawing to his chest before the final fix. She stared at it. A heartbeat machine. Simple. Crude. Crayon-colored, and more meaningful than half the patents in her name. She whispered aloud, barely more than breath. "You didn't fix a machine today. You fixed something in me." The engine coughed once, then silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that falls hard like a dropped wrench in a prayer room. At 14 minutes and 37 seconds, the miracle failed. Smoke slithered from the coolant line, slow and accusing. A faint alarm beeped twice, then again sharper. The live stream froze on the image of Marcus's face, not surprised, not panicked, but hollow-eyed with a strange, restrained clarity. Then came the laughter. Upstairs in the executive suite, Brooks leaned back in his chair with a grin that stretched too far across his face. "Well," he said, sipping his espresso, "even Cinderella's night ends at the stroke of 12. In the hallway outside the test bay, Marcus stood by the vending machine. His knuckles rested gently against the glass, not from anger, but to ground himself. Inside his pocket, Nora's drawing had curled at the corners, a little damp from the heat and pressure of a long day. Maria walked up slowly. "We're pulling the stream. Tech will cite a malfunction." He shook his head. "No, let them see it." She blinked. "Marcus." "The truth doesn't need protecting," he said. "Just someone willing to hold it when it's ugly." Maria hesitated. "Do you really think someone inside sabotaged it?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward the control console where a fresh set of logs was printing. He tore it off the tray, scanning lines like a conductor reading a corrupted score. "There," he said, pointing. Preload on the left bearing was retorqued to 18.2 foot-pounds. "That's not what I set it to." Maria's jaw clenched. "That's deliberate." "Yeah." "And dangerous." "Yeah." Upstairs, Claire watched the replay frame by frame. The moment the torque fell out of sync. The flutter in the coolant sensor. The ripple on Marcus's face so small most people would miss it. But she didn't. Because she'd seen that face before. In the mirror, years ago, when her mother had stood in front of her piano recital and whispered, "Don't embarrass yourself." That same forced calm, that same crushed pride. "What are you feeling, Marcus Hayes?" she whispered into the room. Because I don't know what to feel for the first time in 10 years. Back at his apartment, Marcus sat on the edge of the couch, Nora asleep beside him in her favorite hoodie, 2 sizes too big, sleeves covering her hands like mittens. He hit play on his voicemail. Nora's voice recorded from her grandmother's house a few weeks ago. "Hi, Daddy, I miss you. Are you fixing big engines today? Just don't hit them too hard." "Okay." Machines get scared when people yell. You always say they work better when you whisper. He smiled weakly, then pressed his palm to the old wooden box that sat beside the couch, his father's repair kit. Inside was a worn photo of Marcus as a child standing next to a beat-up tractor and a man with hands as big as dinner plates. Scrawled on the back, "Don't fix it angry. Fix it because it deserves to run." The next morning, Marcus was already in Bay 7 before anyone else arrived. Amelia stepped in 10 minutes later, eyes wide. "You're early. Couldn't sleep." She hesitated. I wanted to tell you something." He turned curious. "I saw someone go into the bay last night. After hours, I didn't think anything of it. But now—" Marcus waited. It was Renner, one of the senior engineers. He nodded. "Makes sense." "You're not mad?" "No," Marcus said, quiet. "Just tired of people thinking someone else's rise means their fall." Amelia looked down. "That's not what he's afraid of." "What then?" "That you might be right, and he's never been the guy who feels machines." By noon, Claire called an emergency executive meeting. The mood was thick. Brooks arrived late, coffee in hand. "What's the damage report?" Maria laid down the sabotage evidence on the table. "Torque shifts. Metadata logs. Unauthorized access after hours." Claire didn't blink. "Someone inside tried to kill the engine." Brooks raised an eyebrow. "Then fire the janitor. End the circus." Claire looked directly at him. He caught the sabotage. "Your circus is just embarrassed someone else knew how to tame the lion." A beat of silence. Then she added, "And we're not firing him." That evening, as the sun began to fall behind the skyline, Claire did something she hadn't done in years. She left the building with no chauffeur, no driver, no assistant. She walked 2 blocks, then 3. Until she found herself outside the old brick building in Harlem, where an apartment light on the 3rd floor flickered with the soft hum of life. She stood across the street, hidden in shadow. In the window, she saw Marcus, sitting on the floor surrounded by parts, teaching Nora how to screw a bolt into a wooden block. She giggled every time the thread squeaked. He didn't teach with diagrams or instructions. He taught with presence, with patience, with a belief that the tiniest parts still mattered. Claire placed a hand to her chest. Her own heart felt uncalibrated. For the first time, she wondered if she had ever run smoothly. Back inside, Marcus tucked Nora into bed. She tugged at his sleeve. "Did it work today?" He sighed. "Not yet." "Did someone mess it up?" "Maybe." She squinted. "Did you get mad?" He paused. "I got quiet," he said. She smiled sleepily. "That's scarier." He laughed gently. "Yeah, maybe it is." Later, at the edge of sleep, Marcus stared at the ceiling. "They want me to quit," he whispered into the dark. "They want me to think I don't belong." But then, his fingers found Nora's drawing on the nightstand, creased-worn but still beating with the color of hope. "But they don't know what it feels like," he said, "to be needed by someone who doesn't care about your title, just your presence." He closed his eyes, and somewhere in the quiet of that Harlem night, an old mechanic's heart kept time with a new kind of rhythm. Not just for machines, but for people. By the time the sun rose over Manhattan the next morning, Marcus was already back in Sub-Bay 7. He wasn't supposed to be. The official tests were done, the live streams offline, the damage reports logged. But he hadn't come to perform. He came to listen. The engine stood still, its casing open like a body on an operating table. Smoke stains still lingered in the corners. The sabotage had left its scar. But Marcus knew scars didn't mean the end. They were just where healing started. He slipped on his brass stethoscope and pressed it to the housing. Thump, thump, thump. The rhythm was faint, broken, but alive, like a heart struggling after trauma. "Don't worry," he murmured, fingers tightening on a ratchet. "We're not done yet." Amelia walked in quietly, holding a steaming coffee in one hand and a new torque wrench in the other. "You know, no one expects you to fix it now, right?" Marcus looked up and half smiled. "They didn't expect me to start either." She set the wrench down beside him. "You're not mad about what happened?" "Being mad," Marcus said. "Tightening a bolt is what got it sabotaged in the first place." She blinked. "I'm not here to outshine anyone," he continued. "I'm just here to keep my promise." "To who?" He looked toward his chest pocket where Nora's drawing now lived inside a clear plastic protector. "To a girl who believes machines have feelings and that her dad can fix anything, even when the whole world's watching him fail." Amelia swallowed hard. "You know," she said softly, "most of the people here, they don't hate you. They're just scared. Scared of what... that maybe they've been looking at machines like puzzles to solve, not people to understand." Together, they lifted the modified bearing assembly into place. Amelia watched closely as Marcus adjusted the preload not by digital readout, but by feel. A mechanic's ear, a grandfather's teaching, a janitor's instinct. Then came the silence. Marcus placed the final panel, turned the key, and stepped back. The engine roared, not loud but confident, like a song played in tune for the very first time. Every sensor blinked green. The vibration monitor, once jumpy and nervous, pulsed in a steady wave. Amelia stared. "It's beautiful," No Marcus said, finally exhaling. "It's honest." High above, in a shadowed corner of the observation deck, Claire Emerson had watched the entire thing. She hadn't meant to come down, but she couldn't stay away. She told herself it was about due diligence, leadership, optics, risk mitigation. But it wasn't. It was about him. About the man who fixed things not for applause, not for credit, but because broken things deserved a second chance. She watched as he walked to the bench, pulled a cloth from his toolbox, and gently polished the brass on the stethoscope like it was a family heirloom. Which, of course, it was. Later that afternoon, Claire summoned Marcus to her office. No assistants, no cameras, no lawyers. Just the two of them. When he walked in, she was staring at a photo frame on her desk, a black and white image of a piano recital stage, long faded corners worn. A girl in a stiff dress sitting alone at the edge of the keys. She didn't look up. "Is it true you rebuilt a transmission using parts from a dishwasher?" Marcus paused. "You heard that story? Brooks is still ranting about it." He chuckled. "I wouldn't say rebuilt, but yeah, I made it run." She finally looked at him. "You made this company run again." He said nothing. So she added, quieter this time, "You made me realize we forgot the point of all this." There was a long, strange silence between them. The kind that doesn't demand to be filled. Then Claire walked around the desk. Close. Closer than any executive was supposed to stand near a janitor. She looked at his hands, still stained with oil, still steady. "Do you ever fix things because you're afraid of what happens if you don't?" Marcus's eyes didn't flinch. "I fix them," he said, "because somebody's counting on me to try, even if I can't promise I'll succeed." Claire inhaled sharply, like the truth had found its way through a crack she thought was sealed shut. Then she said something no one in the company had ever heard come out of her mouth. "Thank you, Marcus." He blinked. "For what?" "For not letting failure stop you, and for making me want to believe in something again." The next day, Claire personally invited Marcus to join the team for the official road test, the final live demonstration to the board, investors, and global partners. Marcus was hesitant. "I'm just the mechanic." "You're the heartbeat," she said. When the day arrived, the presentation floor buzzed with quiet tension. Reporters, cameras, board members. And in the center, the self-driving prototype rebuilt, recalibrated, reborn. Claire stood at the podium, poised, calm, but her eyes searched for something or someone. Then she saw him, Marcus, standing near the bay doors in his uniform toolbox by his side, and next to him, Nora, wearing a yellow dress, holding her laminated drawing like a badge of honor. Claire smiled. Then she did something no one expected. She stepped back from the mic and waved Marcus forward. He froze. She leaned in and whispered, "Let them hear it from the man who taught us how to listen." Marcus stepped up. He looked at the crowd, then at Nora, then at the engine. "Machines aren't magic," he began. "They're memory, rhythm, pressure and patience and hope. And sometimes, they just need someone to believe they're still worth fixing." He nodded toward the bay. "Let's drive." And when the wheels turned smooth, sharp, balanced, something happened. Something bigger than a product launch or an engineering triumph. A shift. Because in that moment every eye turned not to the engine but to the man beside it. Not the CEO, not the investors, but the janitor, who refused to let things stay broken. The test track stretched like a promise under the autumn sun, 2 miles of asphalt curling beyond the glass walls of Emerson Innovations. Reporters crowded the perimeter, their cameras trained on the sleek prototype vehicle gleaming at the starting line. But Marcus wasn't looking at the cameras, or the board members gathered on the platform. He was looking at Nora. Her curls framed her face as she pressed her nose against the glass observation window. In her hands, she clutched the laminated drawing, her heartbeat machine. He raised 2 fingers in a silent salute. She lifted hers back, grinning. The tension in his chest eased. "Final checks complete," Maria called out. She stood by the console headset, secure eyes bright with something between pride and terror. Claire hovered just behind her hands, clasped, her expression schooled into calm. But her eyes were locked on Marcus. "Are you ready?" she asked quietly. Marcus adjusted the wrench in his hand as if grounding himself with the simplest tool he owned. "I've never been more ready for anything," he said. "Not because I'm sure I'll succeed, but because I can't afford not to try." Claire's lips parted just slightly. It wasn't a boardroom answer. It wasn't strategy. It was truth spoken like a vow, and for reasons she couldn't name it, rattled her more than any market threat ever had. The ignition sequence began. The hum rose low and steady like a drumbeat echoing across the asphalt. The vehicle rolled forward, sensors flickering green, the rhythm of its movement almost human. The crowd leaned in. 50 meters, 100, smooth, balanced. Marcus didn't move from his post near the console, but his hand brushed the stethoscope in his pocket like a priest touching a rosary. Inside the observation deck, Nora gasped. "He did it. Daddy fixed the rhythm." Her voice carried innocent and unfiltered, cutting through the buzz of analysts and journalists. Heads turned. A few chuckles rose, but no one dismissed her. Because she was right. The car glided like a dancer across the track. Sharp turns, clean acceleration, no stutter, no hesitation. Maria whispered into her mic, "All systems optimal." And for the first time in weeks, the board erupted in applause. The test ended with the car pulling smoothly back into the bay. The crowd cheered. Engineers clapped each other on the back. Investors muttered about renewed contracts and future patents, but Marcus barely noticed. Because the moment the vehicle came to a stop, Nora wriggled free from the assistant who'd been asked to watch her and bolted across the concrete. "Daddy." She collided into his arms with the force of a 100-pound miracle crayon drawing still crumpled in her hand. "I knew you'd do it," she cried. "I told everyone you would." He lifted her, holding her tight, his eyes closing against the sting of tears he hadn't allowed himself to shed in public. "I didn't do it alone. Peanut," he whispered. "You reminded me how to listen." From the platform, Claire stood frozen. Her polished shoes rooted to the ground, her breath caught in her throat. Because what she saw wasn't an engine's success. It was a father's victory. The kind she'd never known. The kind she'd never had. She found herself clutching the railing as if it were the only thing holding her upright. For a moment, envy rose sharp and bitter. But then it softened, folding into something unfamiliar, something dangerously close to longing. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Claire approached Marcus where he stood with Nora balanced on his hip. The girl's laughter still rang like chimes in the fading sunlight. Claire's heels clicked softly against the pavement. She stopped just close enough that Marcus had to look at her. Their eyes met. "Congratulations," she said evenly. "Don't thank me," Marcus replied. "Thank her." He nodded at Nora. The child beamed, holding up her drawing like a medal. Claire crouched, slightly surprising even herself. She met Nora's gaze. "Is it true?" Claire asked softly. "You believed in him the whole time?" Nora tilted her head, curls bouncing. "Of course. He never quits. He just listens harder." The words hit Claire like a chord struck in the hollow of her chest. She swallowed. "That's a rare gift." Nora shrugged childlike. "It's just Daddy." When Claire rose, Marcus was watching her, and for the first time his expression wasn't wary, wasn't guarded. It was curious. She held his gaze. "How do you do it?" she asked suddenly, her voice quieter than the hum of the cooling engine. He frowned. "Do what keep going when everything around you says stop." Marcus shifted Nora to his other arm, the motion natural protective. He thought for a long moment before answering. "Because stopping isn't just about me," he said finally. "If I quit, she learns quitting is an option, and I can't teach her that, not when the world already wants her to believe it." Claire's throat tightened. She turned quickly before anyone saw the glint of moisture in her eyes. That night, long after the reporters filed their stories and the investors signed their provisional contracts, Claire sat alone in her penthouse. The city sparkled beneath her, an empire of glass and light. She held a glass of wine she couldn't bring herself to sip. On her desk lay a printout from the test, all systems optimal. 0 faults detected. But what echoed louder than the numbers was the sound of a child's voice. "He never quits. He just listens harder." For the first time in years, Claire Emerson wondered if maybe, just maybe, power wasn't the only rhythm worth chasing. The applause was still echoing when the first email hit. Subject: urgent. HR review and legal escalation from legal@emersoninnovations.com. To Claire Emerson. CEO Claire didn't finish reading it until the crowd had cleared and the test vehicle had been wheeled back into its vault. Her knuckles tightened as she scrolled. Attached was a compiled internal investigation sparked by anonymous tips highlighting hostile workplace culture and, most notably, a clipped recording of her proposal to Marcus Hayes in the boardroom weeks prior. The line was damning in isolation. "Fix this engine, and I'll get on one knee and propose to you." Out of context, it sounded like a cruel dare, a threat, a humiliation wrapped in power imbalance. And now it was Exhibit A in a rapidly evolving HR storm. Elsewhere, in a much smaller office, Marcus sat still with a yellow envelope in his lap. The return address read, Law Offices of Deborah Fine and Associates. Inside, Notice of Custody Review Hearing, Family Court, Albany County. His ex-wife had filed for full custody. The reasoning was printed cold and clear. Unstable employment, irregular income, housing insufficient for child well-being. Attached was a screenshot him in his janitor uniform holding a wrench. Captured from the live stream. Next page, a notarized statement. We have concerns about the child's exposure to corporate conflict and uncertain environments. Marcus didn't move. He didn't speak. He just stared at the envelope like it had called him a name he didn't deserve. Nora, asleep on the couch, clutched her now tattered drawing, the lamination peeling slightly at the edges. He exhaled slowly. "They're not trying to take the engine," he whispered. "They're trying to take her." The next morning, Claire entered the executive boardroom to find the air already thick. Brooks stood by the windows, arms folded, smirking. Weber, the German investor, skipped pleasantries. "We want the janitor off the project," he said bluntly. "Immediately. His name is Marcus Hayes. Hayes, then. Remove him. The video of your, let's call it, bet has gone viral. HR is now involved. Public relations is flailing. This is a distraction." Claire glanced at the legal advisor seated beside her. "Do we have cause?" The lawyer adjusted her glasses. "Not legally. He hasn't breached contract. In fact, there's record-breaking performance tied to his contributions. But, peer optics. Yes, it's problematic. Investors are anxious. Your board wants distance from scandal." Brooks leaned in, voice slick. "You can either keep him or keep your seat. You won't keep both." Claire didn't answer, not yet. That night, she didn't go home. She walked. No driver, no security detail. Just heels clicking on cracked sidewalks until she found herself in front of a dimly lit apartment building. The door buzzed. Marcus answered in a gray t-shirt, tired but alert. He didn't look surprised. Just wary. "You came to fire me?" he asked flatly. Claire didn't speak. He stepped aside. She entered. The apartment was small but clean, and the scent of coffee and faint sawdust lingered in the air. Nora's sketches were taped along the wall, some abstract, others surprisingly technical. "You're building a blueprint," Claire murmured. "She is," Marcus said, motioning to the fridge. "Yesterday she said the problem with most machines is that nobody hugs them." Claire gave a soft, breathless laugh. It felt unfamiliar on her tongue. Marcus finally looked her in the eyes. "So, what's it gonna be?" She studied him. "The board wants you gone." "I figured. They want to separate you from the project." Quietly. "And you?" She didn't answer right away. "Then I want to do what's right, but I don't know if what's right and what's safe are the same thing anymore." Marcus nodded. "They're not." She glanced at Nora's sleeping form curled under a blanket, the tip of her thumb still in her mouth. "You'd walk away from everything she said quietly if it meant keeping her, wouldn't you?" In a heartbeat, Marcus replied, "Because I already lost too much pretending a paycheck was the same thing as love." Claire swallowed hard, and in that moment all the cold power in her blood thawed just enough to hurt. Back in her own penthouse, she found herself staring at an old photo again. Her father sitting at a table reading a paper, her 5 years old holding up a picture. He hadn't looked at her, not once. Her mother's handwriting on the back, Claire always wanted him to see her. The next morning, Claire called a meeting. Not in the boardroom, not in legal, but in the employee cafeteria. She stepped onto the makeshift platform with no script, no teleprompter, just her voice. "I made a mistake," she began. "I weaponized a man's integrity for show, and he still saved this company." Gasps echoed. She continued. "If being a leader means protecting my ego over protecting my people, then I don't deserve to lead." She turned to Marcus, standing at the back beside Amelia and Maria. "Mr. Hayes." "Marcus, this company owes you more than a job. It owes you dignity, and no matter what the board decides next week, I won't ask you to shrink so I can keep my title." Nora clapped first, loud, off rhythm, pure. Then others joined in, engineers, assistants, even the janitorial crew, not for the CEO, but for a man who listened harder. Back in her office, Claire found Marcus waiting. He didn't say thank you. He didn't need to. Instead, he said, "You didn't just protect me today. You protected the girl who's watching me." Claire nodded, voice quiet. "Maybe. We're both trying to prove something to someone we used to be." The press conference was scheduled for 3:00 p.m. By 2:15, the main atrium of Emerson Innovations was packed wall to wall, reporters jostling for angles, employees whispering in tight clusters, executives standing with rehearsed neutrality. Above it all, the company's logo hovered on a massive LED screen backlit in sleek corporate blue. But beneath the gloss, everyone knew this wasn't about a product update. This was about the fallout, about the janitor who fixed the company's heartbeat, about the CEO who dared to admit she was wrong, about a little girl whose crayon drawing now hung laminated beside the prototype in the R&D bay. Marcus stood just off stage adjusting the sleeves of his only clean button-up shirt. Nora held his hand fidgeting with the hem of his cuff. "You okay, Daddy?" He nodded once. "I've had tougher crowds." "You gonna tell them about the rhythm?" she asked. Marcus smiled. "I think they already felt it." Amelia, standing nearby, leaned in. "They're ready for you." He looked at her. "What if I say the wrong thing?" She shook her head. "You've been saying the right things all along. It's just the first time they're actually listening." Claire stepped up to the podium first. She wore a charcoal gray suit, simple, no jewelry, no statement heels. The crowd quieted the moment she opened her mouth. "3 weeks ago, I made a bet I thought was clever," she began, voice steady but stripped of her usual icy command. It wasn't. It was demeaning. It was wrong. Flashes from cameras snapped across the room. I've spent years believing power came from control, from being the smartest person in the room, from not apologizing. But today, I stand here to tell you the person who saved this company wasn't at the top floor. He was mopping the floors. A wave of hushed murmurs swept the space. His name is Marcus Hayes, and it's time you heard from him. Marcus stepped forward. He didn't use notes, didn't look at the teleprompter. He looked straight ahead, at faces both skeptical and searching, at engineers who once mocked him, at janitors who stood taller now, at Claire whose shoulders had dropped just slightly as if laying down armor, and then at Nora, who stood in the front row nodding like she already knew what was coming. "I don't know much about suits and stocks," Marcus said, voice calm, measured. "But I know machines. I know how they sound when they're in pain. I know how they whisper when they're about to give up. And I know people ain't so different." Silence. The kind that leans in. When I first came to this building, nobody looked at me twice. I was the janitor, the man with the mop, and that was okay. I didn't need a spotlight. I just needed the job. He paused. But then I saw something broken, and not just in the engine. His eyes flicked briefly to Claire. I saw a company that forgot how to listen, that measured value by degrees and titles, that forgot that rhythm matters in machines and in people. He pulled something from his pocket, the stethoscope, his grandfather's. My daughter once said that machines get scared when you yell at them, that they work better when you whisper. Maybe people do too. Camera shutters went wild, but no one spoke. I'm not asking for applause. I'm asking for attention, for janitors and line workers and cafeteria staff, for every person you pass in the hallway without a glance, because if this company can't hear the heartbeat of its own people, it doesn't matter how fast the machines go. He looked directly at Weber and Brooks. We all make it run. The room erupted into applause, real, sustained. Some employees stood, others wiped their eyes. Nora beamed. Claire returned to the mic. Starting today, we're founding the Nora's Future Fund, a vocational scholarship program for children of support staff. And we'll be launching a mentorship pipeline connecting our engineers with custodial and operations teams. No one here will be invisible again. Also, she turned to Marcus. I'm donating my entire Q4 bonus to launch it, and I hope others on this stage will follow. There were nods, a few awkward coughs from the board, then slow, reluctant claps that soon grew bolder. Afterward, while the cameras were packing up and interviews were being lined up, Claire found Marcus by the courtyard fountain. He was sitting with Nora, tying her shoelace. The girl giggled at something he whispered. Claire waited until they were finished. You didn't have to come today, she said. Didn't feel right to stay quiet. She nodded. You spoke like a leader. I spoke like a father. She looked down. That's something I never had. Not really. Marcus's voice softened. Then you know how much it matters. She nodded. Then, with a strange hesitance, she asked, Do you think people can start over? Marcus studied her face. Only if they stop running from the part that broke first. That hit harder than she expected. Her eyes glistened. You make me want to believe again, Marcus. He didn't flinch. Then, believe. Not in me. In you. You still hear the rhythm. You just forgot how to trust it. A breeze swept through the courtyard. Nora leaned her head against Marcus's shoulder. Claire sat beside them, not quite touching, but not distant either. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. It felt full. 3 months later, the sound of hammers and laughter echoed through the East Harlem Community Center. Not the cold clatter of industry, this was warmer, human, a rhythm made of second chances. Marcus Hayes stood at the edge of a workbench guiding a teenage apprentice through the inner mechanics of an old generator. The boy's hands were tentative but eager. The air smelled of sawdust, metal polish, and grilled cheese from the kitchen next door. Behind them, the newly mounted sign gleamed in the late afternoon sun, the Nora Future Workshop. In honor of those who fix what others leave broken. I think it's sticking. the boy muttered, adjusting a bolt. Marcus leaned over with a smile. Because you're tightening it with fear instead of feeling. How do I feel a machine? He gently placed a hand over the boy's. You listen. It doesn't speak in words, it speaks in resistance, in rhythm. You'll know when it trusts you. The boy blinked, then nodded. That's deep, Mr. Hayes, Marcus chuckled. That's borrowed from a 6-year-old with crayons. From across the room, Claire Emerson watched the exchange with her arms crossed, but her shoulders relaxed, her posture softer than the woman who once ruled boardrooms with surgical precision. She wore jeans now, a simple blouse, her heels replaced by worn sneakers that Nora had decorated with marker hearts. And at her side, the little artist herself bounced in excitement, her curls even wilder than before. Can I give him my blueprint? Nora asked, tugging on Claire's sleeve. Claire smiled. I think he'd be honored. The center had become more than a workshop. It was a bridge between worlds that rarely spoke. Between people who once stood on opposite ends of power and paycheck. Between a CEO who had forgotten how to feel and a janitor who never forgot how to listen. Later that evening, long after the apprentices had gone home and the tools had been cleaned, Marcus stood beneath the string lights hanging from the rafters watching Nora chase bubbles across the courtyard. The final community event of the year was winding down, potlucks, packed up music fading into jazz standards, laughter lingering like perfume. Claire walked out beside him carrying 2 mugs of cocoa. I still can't believe we pulled this off, she said, handing him one. You say that like you weren't the one who sold your vintage Porsche to fund it. Claire shrugged. Some things are worth more than horsepower. He sipped. Nora still talks about that car like it was a unicorn. Tell her I replaced it with better mileage. He laughed. What's the fuel economy on peace of mind? She smiled but didn't answer. Instead, she looked out across the courtyard. I used to think leadership was about being untouchable. The person who never cracks, never cries, never stumbles. Marcus glanced at her. And now I know the ones who build the strongest engines usually have the most scars. He nodded. Sometimes you have to break open to let rhythm in. Across the way, Nora held up a small bottle of bubbles and pointed. Daddy? Miss Claire. Watch this one. It's the magic kind. She blew gently. A single bubble floated upward, shimmering in the golden light of dusk. As it rose, it caught the reflection of the 3 of them. Marcus, Nora, and Claire standing shoulder to shoulder. A triangle of warmth. The bubble hovered for a long moment, then drifted into the sky. Marcus watched it with quiet wonder. She thinks bubbles carry wishes, he said. Claire glanced at him. And what do you think? I think they carry truth. They rise when we finally let go of what weighs us down. They stood like that for a while, silent, still content. Not rushing, not fixing, just being. Eventually, Claire spoke again, her voice low, vulnerable. Do you ever think about what this could be? Marcus turned. This us. He didn't flinch. He didn't look away. I think about it every time you walk into a room and I don't feel small. Her breath caught. I'm not asking for guarantees, she said. Just space, time. He smiled gently. You don't have to ask for what already belongs to you. Nora ran up between them, gripping both their hands. Can we go get ice cream now? Even if it's cold, Claire chuckled. Ice cream is always in season. Marcus grinned. That's my girl. They walked off down the path, Marcus on one side, Claire on the other. Nora swinging their hands in the middle like she was conducting a silent song only she could hear. Behind them, the lights of the workshop flickered on one last time, illuminating the wall where Nora's crayon drawing had been blown up into a mural. A machine, shaped like a heart, humming in perfect rhythm, surrounded by people holding hands. And underneath it in bold lettering, when we listen to each other's heartbeats, we remember our own. And just like that, a janitor, a CEO, and a little girl who believed in rhythm reminded us all that family isn't something you're born with. It's something you build one heartbeat at a time. What part of this story spoke to you the most? And more importantly, where are you listening from today, Honey, Florida, Quiet, Oregon? Maybe a cozy corner in Texas or the streets of New York. We'd love to hear your voice in the comments. Drop your thoughts below. And if this story moved you even just a little, please consider subscribing for more heartfelt tales just like this one. Your support helps us keep telling stories that matter, stories that heal, stories that remind us it's never too late to fix what's been broken. Thank you truly for watching. Until next time, keep listening to the rhythm that matters most, the one inside your heart.